And all those things. Hey, everybody. It's good to be back. I've received such phenomenal feedback on yesterday that we're going to proceed with that format. I know it's cool to watch TED Talks. I certainly like it, or whatever videos, and learn together. And I feel that I can provide some value for you guys as a guide through random stuff on the internet that you might not find yourself or might not have context for yourself and all that. But I'm hearing you guys loud and clear. You like when I talk rather than just listen, and so I will talk. Yesterday's conversation, group, meeting, session, whatever you want to call it, left me quite inspired and left me researching today's topic. I started doing a lot of research into resilience yesterday, into resilience in the plant kingdom, into resilience in a military context, social context. What does resilience mean? What do we have in common? And then, of course, how can we apply it to our spiritual life? How can we draw resilience from our spirituality? Those are some of the questions I've been looking at, and I think I have some decent answers. I'll be honest. I think I have, maybe not the ultimate final answer, but I think I can share some things that I found out in the past day and have put together that'll benefit people. So let's wait till those people show up, and we'll dive right into it. It looks like we've got somebody joining us from Facebook. Welcome from Facebook. Thank you for joining us. I think this topic is timely in a variety of settings and contexts right now. I think everybody is feeling fatigued. Fatigue is often a sign that resilience is getting hammered on. Fatigue is the accumulated stress pushing against resilience. Amiga, good morning. It's so wonderful to have you here this morning. And to everyone on Facebook, unfortunately, it doesn't show me who you are, but welcome. And please feel free to say hi in your chat and good morning, because I'm glad to have you here. Yeah, another TV viewer is here, and it doesn't tell me who else is here. But good morning, everyone, and welcome. So yeah, yesterday's talk I got a lot of good feedback on, and I was encouraged to try to continue along that mode. So I spent a lot of the day yesterday following up our talk, researching resilience. Andrea Campbell, good morning and welcome. Thank you for joining us. Good morning to you, I hope. Afternoon to you if you're on the East Coast, of course. And I'm going to pull up some of the research I got on resilience. Microsoft Word. Yeah, here we go. And, resilience to me is that, I posted that picture to on my Instagram, if you guys have checked it out, of a plant growing through the cracks in the sidewalk, right? That's very much the image of resilience in my mind. That plant could in no way stop that, whatever, from being dug up. It could not stop it from being paved over, could not stop it from having a sidewalk put there, nor could it probably make a crack of its own. But what it could do is be in a state of readiness that the moment the crack appeared, it could start growing through. And that becomes sort of symbolic of resilience. And resilience is something that I'm bringing up now because, whether you're into politics or not into politics, whether you care about what's going on in Afghanistan or not, you have to be aware that things are going back again, right? There are lockdowns in New Zealand again. COVID Delta variant is surging. And this is not the place for health advice or anything to do with that, but simply put, the trajectories of the trend look like the trajectories of the trend last year. And so if it led to lockdowns last year, it seems possible that it could lead to lockdowns this year. I know we got a report from the school district. Our kids are homeschooled, but we got a report from the school district that on the first day of school, 6 kids got COVID. And I know there's also a new report out that kids and toddlers spread COVID in the household faster than older kids, obviously because, there are more boogers and moisture and interacting and closer to them. So all this to say, I think we have the stage set for another trying period, whether it's lockdowns or not, whether there's a resurgence or not, whether it's more vaccines or not, whether it's Afghanistan turning into World War III or not. we got another rough patch ahead. We definitely ain't out the choppy water. Whether it's mass evictions or not, because millions of Americans owe a year and a half at least of rent. No fucking way to pay that. All these things are looming. And however they play out, I have my thoughts on how they play out, but that's not what this is about. However they play out, it will be trying. It will be trying, and resilience will be demanded of us. So I started looking at resilience, and some of you guys know that I'm very into what's called systems theory. It's the idea that any system, doesn't matter if it's a forest or a computer or a human body or an army or a fucking library or a temple or whatever, if it's a system, it works according to certain principles. And we can study the principles of systems and apply them to all these things, right? A lot of my spiritual work is based on systems theory. How I set up, just all that stuff. It's very systems theory influenced. So systems theory has a very strong idea of resilience. Resilience is really, you want a resilient system. And it doesn't matter what kind of system we're talking about. Again, could be an ecological system, could be a computer system. Now, ecology, obviously, the resilience is kind of baked in or provided for by God, nature, evolution, etc. Whereas in a computer system, 100% of the resilience has to be planned and activated by human beings. So a little bit of a difference, but we can study resilient systems versus non-resilient systems in this way and get an idea what works and what doesn't. So with that said, take a moment to do some shout-outs to 007 Infamous. Perhaps a first-timer. I don't recognize that name, so welcome. Thanks for joining us. Amiga, as always, welcome. Andy WMT, welcome back. Another TV viewer, welcome back. CityWitch77, hey, thanks for coming 2 days in a row. It's really good to see you. Diviana577, always a pleasure. And so today we're talking about this idea of spiritual resilience. What does it mean to be resilient? Let's start with that. Resilience is the ability to bounce back after a catastrophe. It's not resistance. It's not the ability to resist a catastrophe. It's not the ability, Sister Coyote, welcome. It's not the ability to prevent a catastrophe. It's not the ability to object to or control the circumstances surrounding you. But it is the ability to bounce back, to survive in a way, and ultimately to thrive. As I said in my Instagram post, I first became interested in resilience in a spiritual context looking at my elders, right? And my elders are Holocaust survivors. And you see, just like war veterans and other people who as a group have experienced similar trauma and have come out differently from it, you see a range. On the one hand, you have people who came out of the Holocaust. A lot of survivors I knew growing up were bitter and cold people. Or most of them were kind of a class up from that, where they actually repressed all their trauma. And so they were not bitter people, but pretty cold, pretty... only the surface was ever engaged. In neither of those categories did I find great people of faith. No, did I find people of great faith? Sorry, I found great people, and some of them were of faith. But I did not find people of great faith. In talking to them and asking if they believe in God, which is sort of the basic, it's Judaism. It's kind of like the start, right? That's kind of what we have in common. That's what makes it Judaism. So asking, do you still believe in God after this? I found a lot of people who said no. And in a way, then the Nazis won, right? Their resilience was snuffed out. They were still alive, but it didn't matter. Not because of the experiences that they had gone through individually in most cases, but what they had lost. People who have lost children and parents and siblings, right before their eyes. Often, whatever will to live they had came with guilt and shame and all that. And certainly, any belief in a higher power, in the greater goodness of humanity, in the beneficial interaction with the human world, with helping others as being virtuous, it was not possible in those people. It was not possible. How could they help another person and think it was virtuous when they thought other people weren't virtuous? Welcome to everyone who tuned in. Hannah VG, thanks for joining us. And so, this became an interesting thing because, on the one hand, I was like, hey, how could you not believe in something greater when you survived? Like, you're not dead. But this leads to the third class. The third class of people are the people who came out, were survivors, still believed in God, still loved and still had a warmth and a vulnerability to them. These people were fascinating. And as I talked and heard their stories and listened to their stories, I was amazed because at first I assumed, well, they must just not have had it as bad. Maybe they were in the labor camps, not the death camps, right? They didn't see their children killed in front of them. They just were separated at some point. So maybe it wasn't as traumatic. Maybe whatever. Maybe they had it easy. Maybe they got out early. Maybe whatever. And in some cases, totally, that's true, right? They got out. But there were some people who were like in Auschwitz, in Birkenau, in the death camps, weighing 89 pounds, starved to death, shoveling dead bodies or shoveling live bodies into ovens so people could be, the people they knew could be killed. These people, for the most part, of course, they were broken. But there were a handful of them. And not only were they not broken, but they were still burning for God. They were still burning for something. Some of them even escaped. I'll share a story. This is more resistance than resilience, but it's a hell of a story. There was a man who was in my parents' synagogue, older gentleman. He seemed kind of weird and was scary to me as a kid. Lisa 1214. Lisa, good morning. Good afternoon. It's so good to see you. So this older gentleman, he was very respected by everyone in the congregation, but to me he seemed like a scary old man. And then one day I heard his story, and he was in a death camp, and he had experienced on a daily basis horrors worse than anything we hopefully will experience in our lives. And he became, the Nazis would just take people and you're my servant now. You're my servant. So he became the servant of a commandant of the camp. And he had to prepare the commandant's clothes, lay out his clothes for him to get dressed, and clear his meals, just be a servant, a slave. But it's like a house slave, right? It was kind of upgrade to being a house slave type thing. Upgrade. And so what he did was he took some of the meat, unfinished meat from one of the meals, and he kept it behind a radiator in the barracks. The Jews didn't have barracks, but the Nazis obviously had a nice warm stove. Wood-burning stove is the word I'm looking for. Not radiator. You put it behind the wood-burning stove, keep the meat warm. And he put a splinter of wood. He found a splinter of wood and put it in there and let it incubate and rot. And he put that splinter of wood in the commandant's sock when he was getting dressed in the morning. And the commandant poked his foot and died of gangrene, So what is that? How does one person have it in them to do that? And he escaped, obviously. The guy, in the mess that occurred, he was able to escape through the forest and made it to America and New Jersey and joined my parents' congregation. So how does one person able to do that and another person who has the same piece of meat, the same sock, and the same splinter, absolutely not able to even think of doing that, let alone try doing that? And then what of the people who didn't do that? What about the people who just endured it and made it out the other end? And made it out the other end in a way where they still believe in God, where they still believe that the world isn't evil, that humanity can be trusted. These are people, again, to put it in context, it's like, imagine if, I don't know, tomorrow they said, you're illegal, and your neighbors snitched you out and turned you in. And it's like everything, every institution, every social faculty, everything that they counted on and believed in, eroded, was gone. And somehow they were able to still count on and believe in God, themselves, their path, the universe. Most of them, I'll say, were not religious. They were spiritual. These people I'm talking, people who fall in this category. They did not necessarily follow all the religious rules and all the theological doctrine and anything like that. But they knew in their hearts that they had a relationship with something greater than themselves. They were a big inspiration to me, and I've heard them, now most of them have passed, but I've heard the folks who have undergone these ordeals and practiced that resilience speak time and again. And as we, as a culture and society in America, have faced increasing trouble and vexation, I've been able to return to a lot of the lessons. And resilience becomes the touchstone. The ability to, look, if you try to resist, you will be crushed, right? If you try to resist COVID, for example, good fucking luck, right? You want to stand out there and resist it? Sooner or later, you're probably going to lose. You want to resist economic whatever, good luck, because eventually it will affect you. How do we take a resilient approach so that we do survive, and not only do we survive, but then we come back, right? Because there's a difference between just surviving as a broken husk until your end comes, and then surviving and coming back. And these are, again, challenges that I think systems theory addresses really, really well. So there's a few different theories of the elements of resilience, etc. But in systems theory, the most kind of basic, boring, sterile, you might say, list is 5, call it 6 things that we're talking organizationally, but we'll talk about 5. Redundancies, flexibility, fail-safe, the ability to rapidly rebound, commitment to learning. Those 5 things are what cause organizational resilience, individual resilience, species resilience, systems resilience, computers resilience. If you build a computer system that has these things, then it's very safe against hackers and ransomware. If you design an ecosystem that has these things, it's very resilient against catastrophes. And I'll give some examples of each of these things from those, and then we'll work into the personal and the spiritual and the magical. So let's just go through the list again and kind of flesh these out. First is redundancies. Redundancies are something that, as a Virgo, I hate because they are inefficient. David Chen, good morning and greetings. Thank you for joining us. I feel like I didn't say that already. I processed it in my head, but it didn't come out of my mouth. So good morning, thank you, and welcome. So, Snow off the Bluff, good morning and welcome, sir. It's good to see you. Icaro 12 Oliveira. Awesome, welcome to see you. Welcome to see you? No, good to see you, welcome. Thanks for checking us out. So, redundancies is, inherently it's inefficient, but it's having backups in some way or another. In an ecosystem, it's what keeps things from getting totally off balance and totally destroyed when one thing goes wrong. Meaning, usually you won't have an ecosystem, a lake or something like that, with only one predator. You usually have more than one predator and more than one type of prey. Because if there's an imbalance, that ecosystem doesn't die. I don't want to say so, because it's not like I don't believe that someone intentionally did that. I think this is the miraculous unfoldings of the universe. So I say because. In a computer system, it's like having a backup, right? You get a ransomware. Oh, shit, they broke my computer. I can't pay 50 million Bitcoin. I have a backup. It's redundant. I don't need this for most of the time, but I'm using it now. The redundancy is having a backup that you don't need most of the time. And it's inefficient and it's expensive. But it's less expensive than the alternative. It's like insurance in a way. So in a computer system, like I said, it's a physical backup. In an organization, it's having more than one person that's capable of handling any responsibility. In a military unit, it's cross-training people so that, like, yeah, one person's your doc, but everybody knows how to apply field first aid in case doc has his hands full or gets shot or whatever. In a security setting, it's sure you've got your alarm system, but what do you have if they beat your alarm system? Is there a backup alarm system? Is there a backup battery? Is there a backup power source? Is there a backup? Is there a backup? And so now let's turn this. Sister Coyote, definitely. It's animals having litters instead of a single birth. Exactly. Like the genome really only needs one animal to survive. That's a fantastic example. The genome only needs one animal to survive a generation to mature to the point of reproducing, but we'll have a lot of them. And the more likely an animal's litter or offspring or spawn are to die, the more they'll have, right? Most bugs die. Most fucking fish die. But they have friggin' thousands of them. So definitely a bunch get through, right? Then That's a perfect example of redundancy. So how do we then learn from this principle of redundancy into our spiritual life? Just start thinking on that. I'm going to go through all the principles and we're going to give examples, and then we'll go through all of them spiritually. Yeah. So redundancy is the first one. For those taking notes, redundancy. Get it? I said it twice. Redundancy. Number 2, the second element or principle of resilience, according to this particular theory, is is flexibility. Flexibility. So flexibility is one in a computer system. I like going from computer systems because, again, they're very intentionally planned, and then you go to nature, which is like it just happens that way. And we learn from nature to build the computers. But so flexibility in a computer system is anything from the simple fact that you have, it kind of ties in with redundancy, but you have wired and wireless Ethernet. You have wireless, or you have Wi-Fi, and then you can also plug in the wire. Okay, there's the Wi-Fi's down, no problem. We can switch to the wired. Flexibility is the ability to yield to pressures and stresses without being structurally compromised. I'll say that again. Flexibility is the ability to yield to pressures and stresses without being structurally compromised. Everything will yield to pressures and stresses if they are enough. Generally speaking, they break. They're structurally compromised. Flexible things don't break, and that allows them to survive it. Again, resilience is very much the art of survival. It's not something we like to think about thriving and, oh my God, manifesting my best self. And like sometimes you're keeping your least self from dying. And that's an important consideration in rough times. In any case, so flexibility. What does flexibility look like in some other settings? Flexibility in, again, there's some amount of, so redundancy is having 2 cars. Flexibility is having a car and a bike. Or flexibility is being able to ride a bike. Flexibility or flexibility is also being like, hey, you know what? I don't need to go out today. I can work with, I can accept that pressure. I can accept that impact. I can accept that constraint provided or placed upon me by an external, and I can change to accommodate it without breaking. Flexibility is something that we don't have a lot of in our time and place because it's very hard to be individualistic and flexible. Because individualism requires some amount of rigidity, requires some amount of certainty, requires some amount of almost excessive assuredness, and that prevents some amount of flexibility. It's why when you see, they talk about the Afghan people right now, it's like they don't really care who's in charge. Whoever's in charge, they're happy to support. That's flexibility. That's what happens when you live in a war-torn region for a long time. It's why, we see it interpersonally, in children and later adults of abusive households become people pleasers. It's a dangerous personal trait when taken to excess, like any personal trait. But that, like, you know what? Whatever you want, I don't care. That people pleasing thing, that's flexibility. So the third one we have is a really interesting concept, and it's the fail-safe. The fail-safe is something that we're going to develop a lot on. A fail-safe is a piece of a system that's meant to fail or meant to restrict failure. It is for any climbers, anyone who's mountain climbed. I'm not, but in my research I found this. It's the ratchet in the gear. That means if the rope slips, it only slips so far. Or it is in a circuit that we all have in our houses, the fuse. The fuse is a failsafe, meaning if the electricity going through is too strong or too dirty or whatever, and it's going to break stuff, that thing is designed to break in a bad situation. It's not designed to survive a bad situation. It's designed to break in a bad situation because when it breaks, it shuts everything down. Without that thing working, everything's shut down. And so that prevents everything from breaking. this idea of preparing for some amount of failure and creating a zone or a place in a system or a part of a process where failure can sort of be sinkholed. That would be the networking term for it, right? You're sinkholing failure. Yes, there's going to be failure, but it's not catastrophic. It's not system-wide. It's not crippling failure because it's constrained. One part is made so that it is more vulnerable and breaks there. Your bumper on a car is a failsafe, basically. Your bumper is made to crumple on impact. It's not made to stay hardened. The interior of your car is, but the bumper is made to crumple to prevent the rest of the force from being transferred. So this idea of a fail-safe is really interesting because by failing, it makes you safe. Not something that we normally think about, plan for, prepare for. I'm trying to think of a really basic example. A drawbridge. A drawbridge is a fantastic example of a fail-safe, right? There's a moat, there's a drawbridge. Worst comes to worst. You've seen it in a million movies. You cross the bridge and cut it, right? Or a rope bridge, a suspension bridge. Cut it, and now it failed. No one can cross the bridge, but also nothing can come across the bridge to you, right? That's a fail-safe. Curly Q, good morning. Good to see you. So, fourth, and this I wish there was a more elegant term for, the ability to rapidly rebound. The ability to rapidly rebound is not just the like, oh, I can do it. It's that do you have the pieces in place to pick up there? In an organization, this is called the disaster continuity plan. You may have heard about like the seed banks, like up in the Arctic Circle, how there's seed banks that have all the Earth's species, and they're all, everything's on ice, perfectly preserved for us, so that if there is species extinction, we can bring things back. It's having the pieces in place that it's ready to go. We don't have to start from scratch. We know it's having, and in a personal life, and again, we'll go more into the personal and the spiritual, all that, once we get through all of them. But that idea of, in a worst case scenario where we're starting from zero, we're going to make it from 0 to 1 and 1 to 2 and 2 to 3 and 3 to 4 and 4 to 5 very quickly. Because we've prepared for that eventuality. We have taken steps to make that easier. Whether it's kind of documenting knowledge, right? The first time we do anything, it's hard. If we know how to do it, it's easier and quicker, etc. So in a resilient situation, like, if the person who knows how to do it is lost, dies, whatever, and someone else has to do it, if they have a written documentation or have some form of education from the person who knew how to do it that's just like on file, it's going to be a lot easier for that next person to just be like, all right, I can be at in 2 days where they were at, rather than, what the fuck is this system? I need to figure this out. It's going to take weeks, right? So that ability to rapidly rebound isn't any specific thing that you do, but it's setting up with that in mind. The fifth thing is a commitment to learning. Commitment to learning is, universal among living species. It is where we kind of make or break it. And this is something, another good place to learn about resilience is, let me give another plug for my buddy Ed's Manifesto. Like, take a class with Ed, and he'll talk a lot about resilience and a lot about what mindset. It's so much about mindset, and commitment to learning is at the highest. Everything you know can become irrelevant in a heartbeat. Everything you are proficient at can become worthless. If you are committed to learning constantly, among these other things, then even in those cases, you will find new possibility. Again, resilience is not about preventing the sidewalk from being put down, nor is it about cracking the sidewalk. It's about waiting till there's that inevitable crack and being able to grow up through it and make seed. That is resilience. So I want to take all of these and bring them back through and talk about what they mean for us interpersonally, socially, and spiritually. And we'll start right back at the top with redundancies. What does it mean to have spiritual redundancies? What does it mean to have redundancies in your spiritual practice, etc.? I mean, you have the very basic material things, like I've got 2 ancestor altars. There's the basic redundancies. So if I hit hard times and for whatever reason, or let's say I don't hit hard times, let's say the fucking electric pole and back snaps and the electric cable hits the temple and the temple burns down and my ancestor altar in there is burnt to cinders, God forbid, I have an ancestor altar. That's very basic material, you know. But in a practice, what does it mean to have redundancies? And I think when we talk about practice, I guess I want to expand further on what does it mean to need a spiritual practice, and what is the purpose of a spiritual practice in trying times that would require resilience. It's multifold. One, those people who came out of the camps still believing in something, it's because they believed in something the whole time. They had a practice of some sort, whether it was waking up every day and saying a prayer or going through a ritual or something like that. They had, and certainly they were not allowed to practice, so it was a very covert, minimal practice that they maintained. So when we have a practice, then what's its function in these situations? To sustain us. What is our function in the practice? Because right in the best of times, we really don't ask for shit during our practice. We try not to, right? It's all about giving praise and thanks. We may ask for little adjustments, maybe, but for the most part, it's not about us. Ultimately, the practice does better us. It improves us. Having the discipline, having the humility, having the commitment, those things, of course, all benefit us. But fundamentally, if I go light a candle, or I go say a prayer, or I go, whatever part of my spiritual practice I engage in, sacrifice an animal, whatever, it's not for me. It's to honor something else. If it was just for me, I would look in the mirror and say, hey, buddy, you're fucking awesome. You got this. Some people do that. That's not my spiritual practice. But that, that's a different thing. And what I'll say is, again, from looking at resilience, from looking at Holocaust survivors, from looking at people who've been through horrors, those people can only do that so long. Can only look in the mirror and say, look, buddy, you fucking got this, to a certain point. If things get hard enough, if that becomes untrue because materially, situations outside of your control make it so that you actually don't fucking got this, then all of a sudden your belief in yourself, your faith in yourself starts to slip, and that's what spirals down into despair. So on the one hand then, as we always engage in our spiritual practice for the benefit of other, right? We don't pray for ourselves, we pray for God. We don't pray for ourselves, we pray for, we don't pray to our ancestors for us, we pray for our ancestors. This idea. So as we move through this, we see a shift in dynamic when we get into these periods of adversity. We'll use that term, right? We're resilient against adversity. So when we enter a period of adversity, our resilience, our spiritual relationship shifts. It shifts because, first of all, we don't have that much to give anymore, right? We don't have necessarily, if you're in a concentration camp, something like that, you don't even have time to give. You certainly don't have money for offerings and fuck no. So something changes. And this is, of course, one of the fascinating things when you look at like folk religion versus Catholicism, right? What's changed there? The time commitment's different. The money commitment's different. The emotional commitment is much greater. The emotional commitment is much greater. All of a sudden, things shift from being about the material commitment and completely become reliant on the emotional commitment. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that during these periods, what is the point? What is the deal with resilience? And we have a few things, because resilience is needed on every level to survive adversity. That's kind of a given. So on the one hand, we need spiritual resilience so that our spirituality survives adversity. On the other hand, We need spirituality to make us more resilient so we survive adversity. And on the kind of collected hands, we need spirituality and resilience in order to make other people and their spirituality more resilient. Because if we make it to a world where we all survive and no one has any faith anymore, it's a brutal fucking world. And that's not a good outcome. All right, I'm going to pause for a moment and drink some coffee. As you guys know, this is fucking day 9 without an energy drink, which is the first time in years. Gone a couple days here and there, maybe 3-4 days, but 9 days without an energy drink, oof, that's hard. That's hard. The semen retention thing is way easier than no energy drink thing. But day 9 without an energy drink, trying to make it work with coffee. Shout out, by the way, to Kyle Ford, who sent me a bag of coffee from his local roaster, and that's what I've been drinking. And hopefully I'm benefiting from it. All right, I need more coffee. I'm going to be honest with you guys. Dude, Sister Coyote, that's awesome. Month 3, no energy drinks? That's fantastic. Were you drinking the big bad boys I was on, the 300 milligram ones? Those things are... I mean, they're like drugs. They're not like caffeine. They're like real fucking drugs. But, you know, these are exactly the sorts of things that we need to cut out to make ourselves more resilient. Because, again, we'll look at the 5 things of resilience. Redundancies, flexibility, fail-safe, ability to rapidly rebound, commitment to learning. Anything that's the opposite of that is going to make us less resilient, right? So let's look through those. What's the opposite of redundancies? Single point of failure. The opposite of flexibility, rigidity. The opposite of fail-safes, tight coupling. The opposite of the ability to rapidly rebound. I mean, and part of that is just a psycho-emotional, you know, but the opposite of the ability to rapidly rebound are long-term commitments. And it could even be like, you know, if you commit something to be somewhere else by putting it there. It doesn't mean interpersonal commitments. And finally, commitment to learning. The opposite of that is a commitment to be a fucking know-it-all. And those things, right, if we go with those opposites, they will guaranteed make you less resilient, right? Single point of failure, rigidity, tight coupling, slow processes, we'll say, and know-it-all attitude. Those 5 things guarantee a non-resilient person, organization, ecosystem, whatever you want to call it. Right? So redundancies, flexibility, fail-safe, ability to rapidly rebound, and commitment to learning are what make a resilient organization. And that's also, by the way, what, you know, look, if we look at how the Taliban's able to retake an entire country in 10 days. They have redundancies, they have flexibility, they have fail-safes, they have an ability to rapidly rebound, and they have a commitment to learning. So serious, you switch from energy drinks to just smelling extracts. Interesting. What's erythroxylum? How does it stimulate? Is it a stimulant? Or how does it metabolize a stimulant chain in your body, or kick off a stimulant chain? I'm interested in this. So energy drinks make us less resilient because they're hard to replace, etc., right? Single point of failure, all those things that make us less resilient, the energy drink typifies. So thankfully, day 9 without them, but goddamn my dragon ass. So, oh, okay, erythroxylum coca. Yeah, that stuff will do it. Smelling it does that for you, or do you mean insulfating it? Because I have a feeling that smelling it's not going to do much for you, bud. So how do we create redundancies in our spiritual life? Again, it is having, 2 Bibles, 2 whatevers, sure. But it also is, when we get down where things break. I mean, I smell it with exuberance. Sirius says that's funny. Yeah, some gets up there, but I'm pretty sure it's just the smelling it that's doing what I'm looking for. Some gets, unfortunately, some does get in there. Yeah, where spirituality, spiritual practice, spiritual belief breaks is in theology, right? Because when one has a certain theology, and this is what we found in Holocaust, people had a very clear theological view of what God was and what God would do for them and what their relationship with God was. When reality challenged that view, it could not accommodate that and still exist. It had to collapse. Right? And I'm not saying keep a backup religion in your back pocket. Right? That's not what I mean by redundancies in this context. But in all of this, realizing that this is the value of having other interpretations. This is the value, in you might keep a backup religion in your back pocket. There's a Chinese saying that people are Confucian in good times, Taoist in bad times, and Buddhist in old age. Something like that. I may have misquoted it. But that there are different philosophies to accommodate different seasons, even within a theological framework, even within a spiritual framework, right? There are different, to go to a straight spiritual framework, there are different spirits or deities or divinities or whatever in virtually every system. If we're talking about pure monotheism, even Judeo-Christian monotheism, let's say we'll strip away saints, we'll strip away sages, and we'll go just to God. There are different aspects and attributes of God that we appeal to in different situations. Having that redundancy, having that framework kind of built out for when the hard times come doesn't seem prudent during the good times. Let's establish that right off the bat. When things are going great, it doesn't seem like it's a worthwhile use of our time, and it's very contrary to like Western self-help advice to connect with the powers that be when things are going bad. Don't focus on the negative. Focus on the positive. Raise your vibration. All that stuff, right? But then when negative comes, whether we're focused on it or not, when it's externally imposed on us, the positive will crumble then. It's not resilient. Let me go back over to my list here. Flexibility. Spiritual flexibility is... I think even in a practice not in a time of great stress, right? So important. Again, in establishment theology, it's not very common. You pray at the same fucking time every day, the same fucking prayers every day, in the same way every day. In our interaction, in our service with spirits, in our personal development, in our personal journeys, that is important. To the degree that we can and are able to commit and do it every day, that's very important. The consistency is more important than the isolated act. And that said, when you're, a refugee, or you are in crazy quarantine or whatever, external factors may come in a way that say you can't do it that way that you were planning on do it. And shit, even if the best of times, right? You're a spiritual worker, you have a practice, you burn a certain type of incense every day, and fuck, you ordered more and it didn't show up yet, and it's the next day. This is very common. This is everyday spiritualism. So what happens on that day when you don't have the incense? Do you not do the ritual? Do you not do your thing because you don't have the incense? Well, if you're being inflexible, yes, and you will break. If you're being flexible, then you'll adapt. You'll work around it. And this we see so much in folk religion, folk magic, diasporic traditions, resistance spirituality, and things like that, right? When we are in a situation, you make do with what you got. This is for those of you who did Hoodoo Academy, or anyone who's studied any conjure with me, At the end of the day, we could do it with a stick in the ground, we could do it with a piece of paper and a pen, we could do it with a doll, we could do it with a candle, we could do it with herbs. There's a bazillion ways to do it. We have to be flexible because we're working in a context where that rigidity is not available. It's not available. So fail-safe, what does that look like in a spiritual practice, in a religious practice? To me, the fail-safe is, a theological fail-safe is something like faith, right? Like, I guess it's not technically a fail-safe. That's like a sinkhole. Because again, the fail-safe is something that when it breaks, it prevents other things from breaking. It is designed to take the break, so to speak, and designed to be replaceable, easily fixable. A spiritual fail-safe, I've been having trouble coming up with an example for this, but I would say certain practices for me become spiritual fail-safes. I have my bottom line practices, right? Like, and I encourage everyone to do this. We're going to get into another one of these that says that. But find your bottom line practice. For me, it's the Shema. It's the basic statement of Jewish faith. Every religion seems to have a basic statement, basic affirmation of faith. Could be the Lord's Prayer. Could be whatever your most basic thing is. Could be a Hail Mary. Could be whatever it is for you. And this is, again, what we see most intensely among folk practitioners, people of real faith in real adversity. So they only have 1 or 2 or 3 prayers. They don't have a fucking prayer book of 100 prayers. Do I have my prayer book? It's in the other room. The Jewish prayer book's long, man. It's very, very long. There's hundreds, thousands of prayers in there. And sometimes I maybe do 100 of them if I'm on my most exalted day. And on most days I do 1 or 2 at least. Every day I'll do at least 1, though. That becomes you can shut down everything but that. At the end of the day, like, even if I couldn't say a prayer to my ancestors, I don't know why, it's praying. You can do it on virtually every circumstance. But for whatever reason, I can let all those go, and somehow in letting those go, it makes things simpler. I guess that's the thing with a failsafe, is that when you let it go, it makes things simpler, not more complicated. Certainly, like, a house is not a failsafe. If you let a house go, things just got a lot more complicated if you don't have a house, right? But things that if you let them go, they make things simpler, not more complicated. Those are fail-safes, And Snow Off the Bluff, the practices you share here are good fail-safes. Yeah, I mean, like, there are things you can pick up and incorporate, and if things get too much, you let them go. But the main point about a fail-safe is you have something else you're protecting, right? It's not just just something that you pick up to let go. And that leads to the ability to rapidly rebound. The ability to rapidly rebound spiritually is something we all face. It's something I've talked about in the beginning beginning your spiritual journey lecture series. It's something that, some days we don't go light the candle. Some days you're just burnt out and you can't refill that water glass. Sometimes it accumulates. And it's 2 days and 3 days and 4 days and 5 days. Now you're looking at it. And now there's a dead bug in there. Now you can't really touch it. And it accumulates and accumulates and accumulates and accumulates. The ability to rapidly rebound is something we can train in ourselves, that when we say, fuck, I really got to refill that water, drop everything, go refill the water. It's just a habit. It's just a habit in spiritual practice. It is being sensitive and attuned to your spirits. Those fuck you really oughtas, the more you ignore those, I really ought to refill the water, I really ought to set out a new candle, I really ought to dust the altar, I really ought to put the offerings out, I really ought to say a prayer, I really ought to set up my ancestor altar, I really ought to, go to church, I really ought to, whatever. Those I really oughtas, those are everything you're looking for. They are coming from the very sources that you're hoping to get in touch with. They are leading the very change that you are hoping to manifest. They are everything you're looking for. And if you ignore them, they will get quieter. And if you ignore them long enough, they will get so quiet that you can't hear them. And then it seems like you don't have to do anything. There's nothing you really ought to do. And yet, nonetheless, you've sort of turned off the faucet on everything you've been looking for. So what does this mean in terms of the ability to rapidly rebound? It's developing a degree of faith and trust and willingness around the I will really oughta. And like, you cannot be attached to the, oh fuck, oh my God, I haven't lit a candle for 5 days. I'm so bad. I shouldn't even go there. My spirits are going to be so mad. Like, none of that. You have to move past that because the eye rapidly rebound. Not the ability to rebound, the ability to rapidly rebound. The only way, look, it's January. It's December. New Year's coming. You make a New Year's resolution to get in shape. January 1st, you join a gym. Right? And you're going to go every day. And you go and you go and you go and you go until you miss one. Whether you're just burnt out that day or your parents are in town or whatever reason, you miss your gym day. Whether or not you immediately go and do a workout within the next 24 hours is a phenomenal predictor of whether you're ever going back to the gym that year or not. Because one day leads to 2, leads to 3, leads to 2 weeks, leads to a month, leads to 6 weeks. And this happens with every habit, every lifestyle change, every new pattern, whether you are quitting alcohol, going to the gym, practicing your spirituality, cleaning your house, maintaining excellent oral hygiene, retaining your semen, whatever you're doing, okay, you're going to fall off the wagon. And if you don't fall off the wagon of your own power during normal times, there's a very good chance that you still might fall off the wagon due to external factors during abnormal times. And when those external stresses are placed on you and knock you off the wagon, it's your ability to just hop right back on the wagon without thinking about it. And so that's where these all come together, right? Because if you have redundancy and you have a fail-safe in place and you are flexible, that all helps you hop back on the wagon, right? Because, I don't have the incense to make my offering and I don't have the time to do the whole prayers and da-da-da-da-da, and the electric wire snapped and burnt down my altars and all this. Those are all going to keep you from rapidly rebounding. But if you have that flexibility to say, but, you know what? Line in the sand. I'm not going to bed tonight without saying a prayer. And I'm going to wake up tomorrow morning and the first thing I'm going to do is say a prayer. And I'm going to go to bed the next day and say, you can start to build that momentum back very quickly. As quickly as you'd lose it for every day that you left. So that ability to rapidly rebound is very connected with having things set in such a way that you don't have to grope and search and reconstruct and undertake in order to renew your endeavor. And then we have the commitment to learning. That's why we do this every day, right? The commitment to learning about oneself, about the world, more about one's spiritual path, is what, on the one hand, will make accepting hardship easier. Because hardship, the reason hardship is hard is it tests what we believe. And if we can't learn, it challenges what we believe and causes a great deal of friction, conflict. But if we can learn, it doesn't challenge what we believe, it just tests it. And then we shift what we believe. We accommodate for that pressure. We accommodate for that influence and expand what we believe, what we know, what we understand. And that is the commitment to learning in a spiritual context. So we've been going about an hour now. We are going to have to go to meditation and prayer pretty soon because I have an 11:30 with my friends the Death Wives. And by the way, if you guys want to check that out on Thursday, I will be with the Death Wives for their Death Folks group, which is a group for anyone interested in end-of-life care, death care, whether you want to be a death doula, funeral director, run a crematorium, any want to be in the death space, fantastic group. Or if you're just like, hey, I might die at some point, and I would like to think and talk about that before I do. It may apply to you. You may die at some point. If it doesn't apply to you, I would like to talk to you about a lot of things. I'm very curious. But Thursday, with Death Folks, I'm going to be doing the thing on ancestor altars, just to talk informal chat, how to set up an ancestor altar, maintaining your ancestor practice, the important, all that good jazz. And an excellent resource for And let me say, your ancestors are not just the old people that lived before your parents, right? Anyone who you've known in life, who you're connected to, your soul is connected to, part of them is in you, and they're dead now, they're an ancestor. So keeping those connections alive, nourishing them where they are, and all that stuff. From a spiritual perspective, from a personal perspective, we're going to be looking at that. Aaron, yeah, that's where I met you. I met you at them, right? I feel like I met you at Death Wives. We didn't know each other before that, right? Oh, or did we know each other from Ritual Craft first? Either way. But you were at Death Wives for sure. So, that's going on Thursday. I do have to talk with them in about half an hour, but I want to finish this up before we do meditation and prayer. We still have about 15 minutes. And I want to talk about all these things and how that spiritual resilience is important in that bigger picture. Because, okay, so now you've made your spiritual practice resilient. You will draw on your spiritual practice to increase your personal resilience. Your personal resilience, this is what I learned from Holocaust survivors more than anything else. Whether you have the will to get up and eat the shit that you had to eat on a given day, rather than just lay on the ground and pray to get shot, had to do with your spiritual practice, your spiritual reality. That's what kept them going. And that's what keeps so many people in so many shit-eating places of the world where they eat great orders of magnitude more shit than we'll ever eat in our lives here. And by the way, I think we have a lot of shit. The waiter's bringing some shit for us in the near future. Don't you worry if you're hungry for it. But the phenomenal suffering that many people in the world go through, that just having some faith enables them to step forward. And so, as spiritual people, as people who have now studied how to make our own spirituality resilient, and as people who will be spiritual in the face of adversity, we will be resilient. And then it comes to, well, how do we help everything be resilient? By being spiritual centers for people, by being spiritual resources, by being spiritual touch points for others. Doing it thoughtfully, we can enable them to be more resilient. Again, so now we look back at that list and we say, how can we, because we are more resilient, because we have made our spirituality resilient, and we have that resource to draw on to increase our personal resilience, how can we help the people around us with their resilience? How can we provide them with redundancies, spiritually or otherwise? You've got someone to talk to, let me be someone else for you to talk to. You guys got groceries? Cool. If you need, I have backup. Right? You guys got whatever it is. How can we provide a redundancy for people? And how can we engage in a way where we're creating redundancies? In the fucked up way, God forbid, if I die, who's taking care of my kids? My wife. If my wife and I die, who's taking care of our kids? How does that chain go? And how does that chain go for everyone in the neighborhood? Not what if everyone in the neighborhood dies, but what if that person dies, or that person dies, or that person dies? Who's taking care of their kids? Right? Or what if all the grown-ups die? What was that book? You guys ever read that book? It's like the girl who ran the city. I don't know. It's where I learned the word megalomaniacal. All the grown-ups die, and this girl takes charge of the city. In any case, how can we, as we are more balanced and we are more resilient, facing hardship, how can we come out and provide these things? How can we create the redundancies for each other? And again, how can we then, by providing those things and letting others be more resilient, then they are enabled to help others. It's a chain reaction of resilience, right? And resilient people, you'll see when hardships begin. I think of my buddy Chris from Nomad, right? Nomad organization. Hurricane come, storm come, whatever come to destroy everything, and everyone's leaving, and he and a convoy of people are going in because they are resilient enough that they can now go and help other people be resilient. Flexibility. How can we help others to be more flexible? Again, part of this is redundancy, but by helping other people soften their views. Not by attacking their views. Look, if you have a hard view, a hardline view, and I attack it It's going to break. But if I find the very edge of it and I start to gently show this and this, it will start to bend. It will start to bend. And when it becomes flexible, it will not break. It will not break. Helping people to be more flexible. And this is, look, again, I'm not making any health comments. You do what the fuck your doctor tells you to do, or what your health professional tells you to do, or whatever. But calling another human being a masker, an anti-masker, a vaxxer, an anti-vaxxer, this is not building flexibility. This is building rigidity. It's labeling another person and fixing them, making them a fixed thing. A fixed thing is not flexible. Labeling yourself, making yourself a fixed thing is not flexible. Okay? And I'm not saying wear a mask, don't wear a mask, get a vaccine, don't do whatever the fuck you want. Or do whatever is safe, wise, and recommended by your health professional. But creating these fixed oppositions is very inflexible. And it will not be resilient. And so resilient comes in resolving these things, in softening them, in bringing them together, in bringing resolution, in dissolving those edges. So the next is fail-safe, right? How can we provide a fail-safe for someone else? Right? A fail-safe for someone else is something like, and I've said this to other people, to some people. I have friends. I wish I could extend it to everyone, but if everyone took me up on it at once, then it wouldn't be a fail-safe. We'd all fuck, right? We'd all be fucked. But I have friends who, have expressed suicidal thoughts. And I say, listen, the next time you want to do it, do me a favor. I will pay for you to come stay here for a week. And if you still want to do it, go do it. But just come stay here for a week first. That's a fail-safe, right? It's creating a fail-safe for them, because if their life fails, meaning life being where you live, what you do, your routine. When their routine fails, it puts them in a safer place, a more simpler place, not a more complicated place. Right? That's creating a fail-safe in that regard. Creating fail-safes for other people. And again, the more people who are resilient in the community, the greater these resources of resilience can be for other people. Ability to rapidly rebound. This is everything from skill training to resource training. This is one of the reasons that I really emphasize everyone go get skill trained. Go whatever you're called to do. If you don't know how to set up a tent, build a shelter, and you sometimes think about that shit, go learn to do that, right? If you don't know how to start a business, and you sometimes think about that, go learn to do that. If you don't know how to, whatever it is, and don't just learn how to run a business, learn to start a business. If you don't know how to, it's interesting. I know how to keep a house, more or less. It's pretty messy, but I know how to keep it, but I have no fucking idea how to build it. So if I had to start from scratch, I would be at a severe disadvantage. In rapidly rebounding if I lost my house. I have insurance and hopefully it'll be okay. But, if the insurance industry can poof and vanish, like the whole governments can disappear overnight. You better believe that your insurance company could. Or could just cut you off, end your policy, whatever. Building in for not just ourselves, but for our community, the ability to rapidly rebound. And this is everything from having seeds and knowing how to grow them, to having water purification capabilities and power generation capabilities. And this is very material things. But if the power grid goes down and I have enough power for my house, that's good. If the power grid goes down and I have enough power for my house and a couple neighbors, that's really good, because hopefully while we have them tied to my power, we can replicate that. And then each of them can have enough power. There's a lot of solar here. And we can grow this. I don't want to overemphasize any mutualism, collectivism. I know a lot of us are isolated, kind of private individuals. It kind of goes with, I don't know, goes with this crowd, right? But knowing that resilience always depends on redundancy and flexibility. And we cannot be, we have very limited redundancy and flexibility when we're isolated. Again, if I die, who's taking care of my kids, right? If I die, if I die, who's taking care of Holy Mountain? Who's taking care of you guys? Who's coming here to do this? there's some ideas in place. Hopefully I don't die too soon, because I admit they're very half-baked. But that's the question. Like, if I'm totally isolated, if I'm a hermit, you're a hermitess, whatever, there's very little redundancy, very little flexibility in that system. There's single point of failure, which is what we don't want. I need to address that in this organization for certain. And commitment to learning. How can we engage others in a commitment to learning in a way? We have a paradigm for doing that right now. We do it by shame, and it's very bad, right? The way we do it right now tends to decrease flexibility, increase tight coupling, increase all these problematic things by attacking a lack of knowledge, asserting a knowledge or something like that. The ability to learn is not the ability to be right. The ability to learn is actually typically the ability to be wrong. Because if you're right about everything, you don't have a fucking lot to learn. So the ability to learn is very much the ability to be wrong. The ability to be humble. The ability to remain curious. And nurturing that in everyone is at times more an emotional issue than a pedagogical issue, right? It's not necessarily an issue of teaching. It's an issue of getting people in a place where they're willing and interested and just open to learning. These are the things that we need to discover in ourselves. And again, building our spiritual practice and building our personal, building a resilient spiritual practice will help our spirituality to be resilient. Having a resilient spirituality will help us as individuals to be resilient. And being resilient individuals helps society and everything become kind of collectively more resilient. And look around the world, there's plenty of failures of these things right here and now, and there's plenty of great successes in these things right here and now. The reason that government does so poorly in catastrophes is it's not very flexible. It's a pretty set structure, There's not a lot of, yes, if the president dies, then the vice president, if the vice president, then the speaker of the house, and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. But if the government dies, there's no backup government, But again, look at Afghanistan. So these are things that if we intend to face even everyday crises, the kid got bit by a dog, the dog got hit by a car, the car got hit by the car got in an accident, whatever we want to go down this chain, these crises are going to come. We have no control over them, and they are going to interrupt, right? They are going to present adversity. Those are the small ones. And then the big ones. And then the bigger ones. And then the huge ones. And so how do we not take it in stride, but again, be flexible? Absorb the impact and the influence of these forces, of this adversity, and keep from breaking. Right? Remember, tightly coupled systems always fail. What does that mean? When two parts are tightly aligned to each other, that's a point of failure in a system, and it is the most likely point to fail. It's not a fail-safe. It's the likely point of failure. Does that mean we shouldn't have close connections with spirits or with people or with our community? No. It's okay to have a connection. Don't be tightly coupled, meaning don't be dependent upon. A tightly coupled system means that if this part moves, this other part has to move. A loosely coupled system would say, if this part moves, this part can move, but doesn't have to move. Tightly coupled systems are the least susceptible to stress because either part or the coupling itself can be broken and the system breaks. So, be connected. God, we got to be connected. Connection is absolutely critical because that's where we have flexibility. That's where we have redundancy. That's where we have fail-safe. All that is in connection. But to be tightly coupled to be dependent upon anyone else, even ourselves, to be tightly coupled to the self at this point, to be dependent on any one thing, is a recipe for failure. Even again in a spiritual life, any one practice, any one devotion. I do advise you have one prayer, but I don't see that as a tight coupling situation because, again, the nature of prayer, right? It's something you can think or say. It's very hard for an external factor to take it away from you in a meaningful way. if you're still conscious. But having this consideration, again, make your spiritual... I'll reiterate it one last time, and then we'll move into meditation with the biggest crowd we've ever had for meditation. So please don't run out. It's amazing. 19 people sitting here for meditation. Wow. That's, to me, that's... Let me look at my list again. That's redundancy, that's flexibility, that's fail-safe. It shows an ability to rapidly rebound and a commitment to learning. By the way, the sixth one that they give, especially for organizations, and it comes to this, it comes up in a social setting, is empathy. It doesn't necessarily come up in a spiritual setting, although have empathy for yourself, please. But having empathy for others. We are not good at this right now. We are not good at this because we're becoming tightly coupled with our ideologies, because we're becoming inflexible and rigid with our worldviews and our labels of other people. And that makes it very, very, very hard to have empathy. But the good news is if we focus on just having empathy, it automatically reduces that tight coupling. It automatically increases flexibility and things of this nature. I will leave on the note, quote from Ed's manifesto, nobody is against you. They are for themselves. That person who, whatever your stance is, that person who thinks you shouldn't get the vaccine, they're not trying to kill you. They are trying to preserve themselves. That person who thinks that you should get the vaccine, they're not trying to kill you or save you. They're trying to preserve themselves. And again, as I said yesterday, that means that every single one of these people, no matter what the view is, actually has the same view. Every single one of these people is sitting here going, I'm scared and I don't want to die. There's a disagreement as to whether the vaccine is going to kill you or the virus is going to kill you or the whatever is going to kill you or this is going to kill you. But 100% of people in the story who have a strong opinion on one way or the other are scared. They are human beings like you who are scared and don't want to suffer. And we can connect on that common ground. And bickering over the facts, sure, we can bicker over the facts. But let us at least connect on that empathetic level and say, damn, you're a human being who's scared and worried. Let me hear you out on this. What are you scared and worried about? Because I'm scared and worried about these other things. You see where I'm coming from? That's a much more productive discussion than, you're an anti-vaxxer, you want me to die, you're an anti-masker, whatever, any of this shit. Carry that empathy. It will build you resilience. Look, and Lisa, I'm not saying there's a right or a wrong, whether you're pro-vax, anti-vax, this vax. I'm just giving that example because I see the mentality where people are, first of all, labeling other people. Second of all, reducing them to stereotypes, right? People say, oh, you don't have a vaccine, you're an anti-vaxxer, you must believe this, and this. Or, you're a pro-vaxxer, bootlicker, da-da-da, you fucking crazy, what kind of, I feel sorry, you're so dumb, you don't realize, da-da-da-da. So someone sent me a video last night that had that. This doesn't help. This doesn't help anyone because everybody is scared. Nobody is sitting there going, stupid people, you're getting a vaccine. Trying to live, idiot. You don't want to die, you're a fucking moron. Nobody's sitting there going, ha, you stupid idiot. You're not getting a vaccine? You're like trying to stay alive? Idiot. No, to the contrary, everyone's saying, you stupid idiot, don't get that vaccine, it's going to kill you. Or, you stupid idiot, get that vaccine, the disease is going to kill you. Again, this is not about vaccines. It's not about what's right, what's wrong there. But bear in mind that every single fucking person on either side of that debate, on the mask debate, on the mask in schools debate, on the whatever, is scared of something. The people who say, oh, I don't want a mask in schools, I don't want anti-maskers, as they're called. They're scared of something. They're scared of something. They're scared that if they wear a mask, something will be gone, something will be different, something will be harmed. You may disagree with that. Look, we probably disagree on I don't necessarily think it's scary if someone comes up to me and pulls a knife out. You might find that very scary. Nerve-wracking, yes, but scary, not necessarily. But that's different. You can't say, oh, you're an idiot for being scared of that. Different threat tolerances. I have learned a lot more about how to deal with a person than a knife than a lot of people. I'm bigger than a lot of people. I have things that are different. It's not the same for everyone, right? It might be very, very scary if someone gets a lawsuit in the mail, and so another person, they might say, fuck it, I don't care. It's a lawsuit, whatever, sue me. I've been through these before. Donald Trump gets a lawsuit in the mail, he doesn't lose a moment's sleep. You or me gets a lawsuit in the mail, we're fucking can't sleep for weeks. Okay? The point isn't that you shouldn't be afraid of that. It's all relative. It's all relative. You're not in a position to judge someone else what they should or shouldn't be afraid of. You may not even be in a position to judge what you yourself should be afraid of. Fuck, maybe I should be afraid of the guy with the knife. Maybe I'm being an idiot. Point being, understanding that no one is acting in such a way as to oppose you. They're trying to preserve themselves from something they're afraid of. It's not productive to gauge whether that fear is valid or not. It's only productive to understand that there's something they're afraid of and that we can play a role in increasing their comfort and security and make each other less afraid. That's all the point on that. So with that said, we got about 15 minutes left. We're going to go into meditation here. I'm positive we got to have some new folks with us. Let me see what the chat has for me here. 007 Infamous. I don't think you've done meditation with us. Andy WMT, I know you have. Another TV viewer, I know you have. City Witch, I know you did yesterday. Commander Root, I know you have. Hana VG, I don't believe you have, so welcome. Excited to share our meditation with you. Icaro 12 Oliveira, I don't believe you've meditated with us. Kiki H717, first of all, welcome. Second of all, I feel like you have meditated with us, but I don't know if you've done this one. Lisa, I know you have done this one. Misery Pimp, pretty sure you've done this one. Robert Paulson, good to see you, sir. Pretty sure you've done this one. Sister Coyote, you were there yesterday. Snow off the Bluff, you were here yesterday. Facebook people, unfortunately, I don't see your names, so I'm going to walk through this again. We're going to do the breath counting meditation. I would call this one a difficulty 5 or 6. It can get more difficult. It can get easier. It's an introductory meditation from Zen Buddhism. It is the first meditation I learned. I've been practicing this since I was 11 or 12 years old. I realized that my computer clock is wrong, so I am going to send the Death Wives a message and tell them I'm going to be a couple minutes late. And then we will go into meditation. I will continue giving instruction. In the meantime, find a comfortable place and position to sit. You can sit on the floor with your legs crossed. You can sit on a chair. If you sit on a chair, sit with your feet flat on the ground and not crossed. Just flat. Your knees making a 90-degree angle. Angle, not ankle. It would be like 11:45 for me. Sorry. Message to Death Wives. Cool. Okay, so we're sitting. If we're sitting in a chair, which I assume most of us are, 90-degree angle of the knees, feet flat on the ground. Hands can be up like this, down like this. The Zen way would be to do it like this. If you were doing it like this, you want your thumbs to be touching such a way that if a piece of paper was placed between them, someone could easily pull it out, right? So these are not pressed together. These are just barely resting. And they say it's as if you're cradling an egg. I'm holding it up here. You would hold that in your lap. So it's a bit awkward. You don't usually hold this position up here. But you will hold it down here in your lap. And it's as if you're cradling an egg. Your shoulders are back. Your head is up. Your spine is straight like a column between the earth and heaven. Your eyes. You're going to take your gaze, look forward, and let it drop down about 45 to 60 degrees. So your eyes form a downward angle. Your eyelids will therefore be drooped, but not closed. If you want to close your eyes, that's fine. Just be mindful because it's easier to drift off with closed eyes. And the point of this exercise is focus. So this is your physical posture. This is what you're doing with your body. And once that's set up, kind of just forget about it. This isn't yoga. It's not focused on your body. We're leaving the body behind. In Zen, they say drop off body and mind. So we're leaving the body behind, and we are just setting it in a kind of a neutral position where we don't have to worry about it. It's safe, it's secure, it's balanced, it's not falling over. We don't have to respond to it, and it's good. So now what do we do since we're dropping off the body and mind? We focus on the breath. And how do we focus on the breath? For this exercise, we focus on the breath in a very simple and surprisingly devious way, which is breath counting. So we will inhale, hold the breath, exhale, notice the space after the breath, inhale, let the breath turn, exhale, space after the breath, inhale. So it's kind of like a 4-part breath. You have inhale, it turns. You exhale. There's another turning or the emptiness, and you inhale again. So that 4-part cycle is one breath. And for each breath, we're going to count one. So is one. That was inhale, turn, exhale, pause. That's one. Now the second one. So that's 2. So we're going to do this up to 9. 9 breaths in a row. And then at 9, we're going to start back at 1. You keep breathing in the same way. Inhale, breath turns, exhale, emptiness. Inhale, breath turns, exhale, emptiness. So that part's the same. And during that, you're counting 1, 2, 3. And when you get to 9, instead of going to 10, start back at 1. So one of two things will typically happen if your focus shifts. Either you are not counting anymore. You're thinking about, chocolate gummy bears or whatever the hell. Your mind's just wandering. You're basically dreaming or in trance. There's a fine capacity. There are plenty of meditation exercises we use to train that. That's not what we're training in this exercise. It's like using the workout equipment wrong. Don't do it. You might hurt yourself. Okay, so the goal is to keep your mind focused on the counting of the breath. If something else comes in, no problem. Let it go. Acknowledge that it's there and let it go. If it enters your mind, I got to pay that bill. Okay, that's fine. I acknowledge you. I'll see you later. Let it go. Let it pass right through your mind. If you're unable to do that and it breaks you out of your count, you start back at 1. The other thing that happens is you get entranced. You get caught in the counting, so to speak. And so you go 9, 10, and by the way, you're not counting out loud. You're just counting in your mind. I'm counting out loud so you guys can hear me counting. But once you find you're at 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, you have gotten in the cycle of counting, but you've lost your focus on the exercise. You've lost the fact that you're supposed to restart at 1. So restart at 1, no matter where you are. So the goal is to get to 9, back to 1, 9, back to 1, 9, back to 1. As many times as you can. We're going to go for 10 minutes, and the timer will go off. There's no right way, there's no wrong way to do that, right? Some of us will picture the numeral 1 in my mind's eye the whole time until I do the emptiness and draw in the second breath, and then I'll move to the numeral 2. Some people will picture the sound. Some people will picture 1 pebble, 2 pebbles, 3 pebbles. Some people will just hold the concept of 1 in their mind. It doesn't there's no right or wrong way to do that. It's what works for your mind, your psyche, for this exercise. Anything that invades on your mind, anything that is not part of your breath counting, again, the best thing to do is just acknowledge it and let it go. And you literally in your mind, just think, let go. Or I'm trying to think of some of the little words they've given us to say to ourselves in those. I see you is another one, or release. And just the idea is to let that flow through your head, knowing that in 10 minutes this timer is going to go off, and all those concerns that you have that you're putting to the side are more than welcome to come flooding back in. More than welcome to. 15 minutes from now, if you want to worry about the bills and the fucking whatever, Instagram and all that, cool. But if that enters your mind during this, you're letting it go. Okay. The other thing, the last technical point I have to make, and I'm going to see if I can adjust my camera. Maybe not. Is where you're breathing. This is not helpful in a black shirt. So normally we're breathing into our lungs. Sometimes we breathe into our diaphragm. Right? If we're singing or using an opera voice, we'll breathe into our diaphragm. Here, we're breathing into what's called a hara. Hara is lower dantian in Chinese, is this. Beneath the navel, between the navel and the generative organs, right? This is a very low point in the body. And the goal is to breathe into it, have the breath turn there, and come out there. Some amount of breath is okay. It will pool in there, and that's normal. You build chi in your body that way. Ki in Japanese, whatever, but that's fine. But this period, this area sort of beneath your belly button, for those of you who've done the chakra exercises with us, remember we took one hand and put it on the chair, and that's the first chakra. And then we take the second hand and put it on top of that, and that's the second chakra. Kind of stops at your belly button. That zone, that second chakra zone, that's where we're breathing. Okay. So again, I'm going to set the timer for 10 minutes. We're going to count our breaths to 9, back, and keep going. Timer. Bloop. Delete. 10 minutes. Any questions? Please bring them up in the chat. We have 17 people with us for meditation today. It was phenomenal. This is, I think, one of the biggest meditation groups I've ever been a part of. So thank you all. I hope you will feel free to ask any questions. Oh, peace. NyQuil under your other name, Mad with Hats, bro. I'm glad you're able to join us for meditation, dude. Certainly we could all use it. So any questions? I don't see any coming up in the chat. I encourage you, just go forward with what you think is right to do and ask questions afterwards. If they come up during your practice, remember, if anything enters your mind, let it go. Count to 9. Start back at 1. If you find you're over 9, start back at 1. If you find you've stopped counting for some reason, start back at 1. Just focus on your breath. Breathe into your hara. Okay, I'm setting the timer for 10 minutes. I will mic off for this, so it will be dead air, and I'll be sitting pretty still. So it will probably be pretty hilarious. It'll look like the connection is broken, but as long as it says live, we are still live. Maybe I can come up with like a little animation that can run across the screen or something to ensure you guys that we are alive. Oh, I know what I'll do. Let's do... I'm probably going to mute it. I don't want any sound for this one. I don't particularly like meditating with sound, but... Oh, perfect. This looks like a ridiculous thing to watch. These guys go to Harvard and do a lot of drugs, but I think they probably have some cool geometry going on here. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that guy... That is what you're... Good use of money. Hey, Misery Pimp, bro, thank you for that sub. By the way, you can subscribe to the stream. It costs you like $2. If you have Amazon Prime, it is totally free. I get $2. More importantly, you don't have to see any fucking commercials accessing the Twitch. So I strongly recommend, let's get rid of those commercials. If you're already paying for Amazon Prime, you're actually not putting any more money in Bezos' pocket. You're kind of pulling some out of his pocket by doing this. Strongly encourage you to subscribe. You get that cool thing. If you see Misery Pimp has that cool thing, that cool first thing right there. And your sister Coyote has one. You get cool stuff when you subscribe. And I strongly recommend it because, again, it most importantly helps you get rid of your commercials. All right, I'm going to get this Harvard drug kid and his visualizations on screen just so you guys know that the stream is live, because otherwise, well, that would get confusing. XSplit Broadcaster, here we go. Text with cam overlay. Yeah. Okay, again, I don't encourage you to look at the hippies' crazy visualizations. This is really just for people who tune into the stream so they know that it is a live stream. I recommend you lower your eyes or close them. So with that said, 15 of us here. My timer's ready. My mic's about to be off. Here we go. So we're about halfway through. Make sure you're checking your posture, check your count, focus on your breath. Coming to the end here, guys. 90 seconds. Let's get a few more rounds in. That's 10 minutes. So for those of you who have never done it before, you have just performed 10 minutes of Zen sitting meditation. Congratulations. For those of you who have done it before, that's another one in the book, gang. Good work. Good work, everyone. I think that's our biggest turnout for meditation yet. That makes me really, really happy. Thanks for joining, guys. I'm going to turn off the DMT Harvard Bro for a sec and bring myself back on screen. So many of you have not made it this far with us. After meditation, we have one last thing, which is where we kind of give our praise and acknowledgement and give our prayer for the day. And I encourage you to participate in the way that feels right for you. If that means repeating what I say, cool, repeat what I say. If that means just listening to what I say and at the end saying amen, cool, that's a pretty traditional way of doing it. If that means saying something completely different than what I'm saying, cool, do that. Draw inspiration from what I say. Don't draw inspiration from what I say. What have you. Before we dive into that, though, because I have a couple minutes, well, let's see if the Death Wife sent me the Zoom link yet. If they did, then I don't have a couple minutes. They didn't send me a Zoom link yet, so I have a couple minutes. Usually we just pray for 2 minutes. But if you guys had any interesting experiences in the meditation practice, any challenges, any questions about what you experienced, if you found it was much more difficult than you thought it was going to be to just count to 9 over and over, yeah, man, the mind's tricky like that. If it started pulling you into different realms of colors and experiences and feelings and ideas, that we're training it day by day, practicing and training to bring it back to what we're focusing on, and have some command over ourselves. So that's what the practice is. We do it every day. It's free and easy. Come join us. You can do it on your own, of course. But if you have questions about your practice or anything you experienced, or want to try something different or whatever, please feel free to reach out to me. So with that said, take a deep breath into my center. Kind of exhale forcefully. I'm trying to break myself out of that floaty space I was in. And exhale again. And one more time, bring into myself breath and life and energy. And as I exhale, I know that fire of life is going through my blood. That spirit of life is going from my breath through my blood. My heart's putting it through my whole body. That electrical impulse is going through not just my brain and my spinal column, but the entirety of myself. And I am alive. I'm a living being, a living creature, here with each of you living creatures, and all of the creatures around me. Because indeed, every inanimate object is a creature, if not a creature of nature, then a creature of man, which is a creature of nature. Inevitably, it's all in the chain. That we are all creations. And that at the top, at the beginning of that first cause is the creator. Whether you anthropomorphize it and call it God, or whether you just acknowledge the first cause, the first thing to which all things are subsequent. And acknowledge that first cause is still manifesting in each one of us in this very moment and in every subsequent creation, each of which then manifests in us. And so here we sit and stand as the manifestation of tears upon tears, spheres upon spheres of creation singing through us, our very existence, the expression of the joyful vibration and sounding of all of these causes and effects, the symphony of these things coming to be in us, reside right in us, right now in this time, in this moment, full of all those sources, vibrating in attunement with all those sources, completely energized by their infinite energy right here and right now in us. The present manifests. All these things intersect and meet right here, right now in the present for our consciousness to perceive the totality that we experience. And therefore, as we are of the exact same substance and the exact same energy and the results of the same causes and the causes of the same effects, let us feel our unity with this entire chain. Let us open ourselves to it. Let us be invigorated. Let us find our way forward from here. Each step made more clear as we come more and more into accord with our own true nature, which is the true nature that we have received as the concrescence of all of these causes coming to be in us. From our material sources in the elements of the universe, to our individual sources from our ancestors, to our greater sources, to those fundamental wells of energy and matter that have come to create everything subsequent to them, to all those things entering into us, to all those things coming to reside in us, to all those things that find their expression through us. Let us be open and let us be grateful and let us be empowered by that connection. And let us move forward in that faith and confidence of our unity and our essential oneness with this perfect and ongoing process. And let us all say, Amen. Thank you all for tuning in. It has been a blast seeing so many new faces and names in here, and we do it every day, Monday through Friday, about 10 a.m. Mountain Time, 9 a.m. Pacific. Sometimes we're a little late, but that's about when we do it. I don't always post notifications, so if you're here because you saw a notification on the Instagram, that's great. Click that follow button. It's down there somewhere in the bottom right. Click that follow button. Of course, I appreciate it if you click that subscribe button. If you have Amazon Prime, you do the Prime sub thing. It's just totally free. It gives me a couple bucks a month, literally like $2 a month. But more importantly, you don't have any commercials. It removes all your barriers to entry. Esmeralda, thank you for that like. Also, as always, feel free, and I greatly appreciate it if you support the stream by going to streamlabs.com/HoodooMoses. They're right there. You can make donations to support the stream. That makes the zombie run, which I always like. And otherwise, I'll see you guys tomorrow. See you later today on the Instagram. And we'll see you over on the Discord. Don't forget to join our Discord. If you like this stuff, like any of the topics we're treating, the people in here, the conversations that are ongoing in here, the practices that we're exploring here, we have a Discord group where it's kind of like a mix of a chat room and a forum. It's super cool. We've got a library with hundreds of texts on there and more coming. We strongly encourage you to join us on there and be part of the community. With that said, every single one of you, as I say every day, I thank you for being here. I